that is cool right there. And so what's happening is it's going to take it live stream via YouTube, and so I think that that's going to be pretty hot. Now, my reasoning for doing this, and so even if you pulled up my YouTube channel tonight, those that are on there would be able to see that my meeting is live streamed on YouTube right now. Now, the reason that I'm doing it because I want the replay to be available for you to look at, and then I'll give some more information at a later date. Tonight, I'll probably take about 45 minutes or so. Now, here's the thing about podcasts. Podcasts, even though I'm going to have an audio version of this that I'll share, I'm going to have a video version as well. Now, like Brother Caven mentioned, podcast is the thing. People listen to them at the gym. People listen to them on their way to work. They subscribe to them. And it is a way for you to not only find an audience, but to connect with an audience. Let me say that again. It's a way to find it and connect with it. Now, here's what happens. I'm using my computer to be able to use the on my iMac, a newer one that I was able to come across on eBay. I was able to get this normally about $900. I paid like $175 for it, and it was one of the newer models. Now, the reason that I like it is because of the HD camera. It's a better camera than the other ones, and it picks up fine. Now, Brother Caven mentioned about the microphone. I have one. This microphone, this particular one, has a popping screen above it, so it gives you a better sound. Now, it depends on what you want. I have another one that's on another system, and it depends on what you want. You don't have to start off with the microphone first. You can just use your phone. The microphone, I'm able to pick up on Amazon, and they are really cheap. They can run anywhere from $39 to $200. It all depends on what your flavor is. Now, I always tell some people, get good at it before you invest a lot of money in it. So I was able to pick that up, and so tonight I'm doing this through Zoom. I'm doing it because I have a YouTube channel. I could either went live on YouTube, or I could have went live on Facebook. I chose not to do Facebook because I wanted to save it to YouTube for later and be able to give you all the links to it. And inside of that, I'll drop in the messaging some links of some of the things that I got from somewhere. Now, here's something that if you desire to do that you wanted to use, you can use your phone, and your phone has a feature that will let you record audio. I do it all the time. Now, here's the average length. Your podcast does not have to be very long. I would suggest 15 minutes or so, and you do just different episodes. But here's the first thing that I always tell people to come up with. Come up with a title. Come up with a title. Like one of the things that I use for my show was Living the Dream with Dion Middleton, and then I can have different titles that I deal with under Living the Dream. I may want to talk about leadership, and so I can do about 6 or 7 podcasts at one time on leadership. Now, some people record the video because they do put it on Facebook. If you're not comfortable with that, you can just do the audio. And once you do the audio, you can save it. And there are different profiles like SoundCloud and Patreon that allow you to put podcast in there. Now, here's a reality. Uh, as a pastor, 15 minutes is a short time for me to talk. But I say for everyone else, it may not be short. It may be a longer time to be able to speak. So it depends on, you can grow yourself into it. Now, here's what I do. When it comes to making like my Facebook Lives or comes to making a podcast, I prepare it like I prepare a sermon. I'll put different tips or points and so forth like that I may want to cover in that. Like I'm working on one right now that deals with mentors in ministry and about a lesson that I taught before about modeling the message. And I taught it here. I've taught it in other ministries, and it had a profounding effect. But that sermon that I had that was about 45 minutes, I'm in my 5th podcast of about 15 minutes on that, and I give little tidbits. Now, here's what I'm doing. I'm building up my podcast library so that when I get subscribers to my library, I can tell them, hey, you can get this information at any time that you would like to, that you would like to use it. Ariel's on the phone. I mean, not on the phone. She's on the podcast. Like she could do beauty from the inside out and talk about tips, outward beauty, inward beauty, confidence, whatever it is that you're comfortable with talking about. So you can write down your notes and begin to say, you know what, because I want to make a podcast. I want my information to impact people. And so whatever you're confident with and whatever you're good at, that's what you want to do. But the first thing you want to do is come up with a title. I didn't put one on tonight, but you can go to Fiverr and have them make you an intro video. Tonight, I like Miles Monroe. So that's what you heard tonight in intros. I could add an intro to my podcast and it would play where it would say "Living the Dream" with Rodney Middleton, or "Living the Dream" with Dion Middleton, and that's what would play prior to being able to do that. Now, here's why that's so important. You are beginning to brand yourself so that people will understand and know who they are connecting to and what you'll get by connecting to me. Because as far as I'm concerned, you are valuable and you have valuable information. Now, here's why I'm into the podcasting thing. Here's why I'm into the podcasting thing. Facebook Live has a lot of visitors and the algorithm changes unless you get notifications and all that stuff. But you may not want to do Facebook Live. Here's what happens. Podcasting is better than blogging because most people don't want to take the time to read the information, but they want to take the time to listen to the information. And here's the thing. You only have 700,000 podcasts that are out there. So the competition, really, you don't have as much competition because most of the people that don't have a podcast. And so it's an opportunity for you to eventually get into the Apple Store, get into SoundCloud, Shopify, whatever it is you want to get into, and we'll make sure we share those links with you. Either after the broadcast, we can send them to you. So the first thing, get a title. What's your title? You can just use your name. You don't even have to get creative or anything like that. Just use your name, and then take a topic that you're going to talk about. So if your thing is about serving, or if your thing is about shining, if your thing is about leadership, if your thing is about writing a book, here's what podcast does. It opens you up as an influencer. I'm going to say it again. It opens you up as an influencer. Here's the second thing that's happening, because what most people don't realize, the game is changing when it comes to podcasts. Because the reality is, I can bring anyone on my podcast that listens to my podcast. I can bring them on and have an interview, 15 minutes, exposing them about what they do, their brand, and how they get it done. Now, here's the other thing that I think is so hot. Even when it comes to a lot of the conferences, a lot of conferences are changing, even when it comes to people speaking and so forth. I've been involved recently in where they're doing now that are virtual conferences. And virtual conferences, because they have listened to my information, seen my tape, they get me on and I become a conference speaker, but I get a chance to do it from the privacy of my basement. So I don't have to spend an airline fee. I don't have to do gas. I don't have to do hotel or any of those things. And yet you begin to get noticed because people begin to see who you are. And that's what happens with me. I began to get exposure with other people that see what I'm doing, and they are willing to do that. And so that's just a part of the exposure. Even the speakers conference that they had this year, that Cheryl Jackson does. She does one here in the DC area. She had speakers that were there, but she had speaking opportunities for people that were virtual. Now, here's the thing. The virtual speakers got just as much airtime and play as the people who flew to Atlanta, flew to DC, flew to the venue and became a part of it. I'm like, man, that is so cool. So here's the thing about you becoming a podcaster. not only do you get a brand, but you begin to get a free way to get yourself noticed, because podcasters will subscribe to other podcasters to see what they can collaborate on. I'm gonna say it again. Podcasters will respond and subscribe to other podcasters to see what type of person that they can begin to collaborate with. And so I've been able to collaborate with some other people and never leave the privacy of my own office or the privacy of my own basement. I think that I wanted to share that because I wanted to give people an opportunity to know that there are other avenues and venues out there that they can begin to share and express what it is that they're trying to do. And so what I want you to do is I don't just want you to be a podcaster. I want you to be a top-notch podcaster. And just like what happened with the senator, where he started a podcast one week, and by the end of the week, he had the #1 podcast, on the internet. I think that's pretty cool. And so I just think it's an opportunity for you to share information and to become #1 at what you desire. If you want to be #1, just go ahead, raise your hand in the comments section, say, yep, that's me. I want to be #1. I want to be #1. That's what I desire to do. So look at this. Why podcast? Why? Well, what we want to do is we want to create a podcast that engage your audience. That's what this is about. You want to gain engagement with people on your subject. I'm going to say it one more time. You want to begin to engage people, because the reason that I use this picture right here is because I'm looking down at my phone, and because so many people use their phone devices as tools to be able to do what they want to do. This right here is an indicator of how I've gotten other people to listen. Because see, here's what I'll share with you. You don't even want to give everything inside of your podcast. You just want to give enough to have people be a hook to your product, a hook to your service, a hook to it. You want them to come back, because if you were doing leadership, you'll become the example. You'll become the expert on leadership. Now, I think that's how when people will find you and they say, hey, how do people find out about you? Or someone says, hey, can you come on my podcast and let me interview you on about leadership? Well, we're going to be there about 15, 20 minutes and you get ready. How good is that we can help each other by giving each other a platform to share the message that we have. Now, here's the thing about podcasting. You got to have a target audience. Everybody is not made for you. I'm going to say it one more time. Everybody is not made for you. You think you might going to please everybody? No, that's not going to happen. Here's what you're doing. You're marketing to a segment can be defined as a division of the market. You have a piece of the market or select group of the market based on a variety of factors such as needs, characteristics, behaviors, so that the application of the marketing mix can be appropriate to the individual. So can you imagine, and I would say yes in this, can you imagine that inside of your, because most of us have had sheets where we have not just market, but we have our social media followings, but very few have podcasts. Now, here's the thing about podcasting. When you start doing events or going into audiences, you're going to have people in that audience that know you through your podcast. They're going to feel intimate with you through your podcast. I mean, how dope is that? People walk and say, hey, I've been enjoying everything you've been teaching on how to get personal growth, or the 5 steps to get personal growth. And you just give one step and elaborate in each podcast. They're going to get a sense like, I know you. And because I know you, I want more. I want to get books. I want to get courses. I want to get information on there without you even going into the factor of trying to sell them. So here's the thing. These are just tools. I put on there microphone, computer, cell phone. A lot of us have the cell phone and the computer that we can use. The microphone is something optional you can get to hook to the computer that you are able to use. Now, the only reason that I use a microphone, let me give you this. The reason that I use a microphone is because I want better audio sound. That's the only reason I use a microphone. My audio sound is going to be much, much better than if I just use the internal microphone on the computer, excuse me, or the microphone on my telephone. You're going to get airplay in it. So what happens is using a microphone, while it's not mandatory, it will engage your audience because the clearness of the sound, you will almost sound as if you are in a studio. That's how you will sound. So you get a target audience, you start obtaining tools, but remember the first two things. Get a title. And then once you get a title, take some topics that you want to use inside of your title is what you want to do. So here's the thing that we're working with. Here's the thing that we're working with. Thank you, sweetie. We're working with you getting a title. Now, what is that doing? You're branding yourself. You're becoming a big deal. Go ahead and type in the comment section, I'm a big deal. I'm a big deal. I'm a real big deal. And because that's what the podcast is going to make you, a big deal. And so a lot of times we'll do stuff that will be based upon the confessions that we can do. What are we trying to do? We're trying to make you bigger, because at the end of this, everyone that's in a podcast, everyone that's on a podcast, here's the thing. Can you imagine? Yes, you can imagine. I need to stop saying it. That I say, okay, when do you want to start? 30 days, when you want to start 60 days. Now, once you write your topic, because you'll start seeing me put posts out on that I want to interview people for my TV show. See, I went and made my podcast my TV show. What, living the dream. Don't nobody know I'm sitting in my basement. Don't nobody know you sitting in your basement. Don't nobody know that. We just sitting up here doing the same thing like that I've done when I've gone to audiences and talking about that. And so it's just getting a very interesting topic, doing the pre-recording. And then once we do the pre-recording, we can put it on your podcast. We can put it on our podcast. Now, here's why I say we do that, because a lot of times you want influencers to tag your podcast because it gets you higher on the Google search. And so even with mine, my name comes up a little higher on the Google search. So when I do it and you do it, your name's higher on the Google search. Now, not only will you get your target audience, but there are some people that you'll get that may be my target audience, but really want your content. Now, why do I not mind sharing my content? I don't mind sharing my content because if you have a valuable tool, if you have a valuable tool that will help someone else, I want you to be able to say, hey, I know someone that can, I use Minister Lori. I know someone that can help you to shine. I know someone that can help you develop yourself, personal development. And I put her on there. What am I doing? I'm meeting the needs of people that follow me, and they'll follow me even more because they know that I'm about meeting their needs. Here's the other thing. If I was to use Minister Caven, Minister Caven has done a tremendous book on men. Now, here's the thing. We can now create podcasts around his book, and he can take excerpts from his book. And when he's doing his podcast, he can make reference to his book. And what happens is if he does 6 podcasts on his book, now he can relaunch his book with the podcast as the forefront, and he can plug his book in every podcast that he's going to do. But his podcast is going to be so hot, people are going to say, hey, I need a way to get that book. I got to get that book in my hand because I know how it will affect, other people. So that's the whole goal. We are after what people have for answers. We have their answers. We have their answers. Go ahead and type, I have people's answers. Go ahead and type that. Now, this one I put in there earlier, that they come up with a topic you want to use in your podcast. You may want to stick with one topic and be known for that one topic. Come up with a topic you want to use. You got a title, an example. If you want to teach on leadership or beauty, okay. If you can, like I said before, I can do mentoring and leadership with Rodney Middleton. Part of the broadcast. You don't have to come up with anything. You tape it, you upload it. Here's the beauty of that. You can edit it. Now, here's a part I tell people about writing out outlines and notes. Here's what happens with outlines and notes. You don't have to worry about if you make a mistake. You can edit if you want to, but it's a podcast. You can just go ahead and record what you have because you're sticking to your script or your manuscript and be able to have an effect. Why? Because you're the expert at the topic that you chose. You're the expert at the topic. And that's what we want to become to other people. We want to be the expert. That's who we want to be. We want to be the expert. Who are we going to be the expert to? Our target audience, okay, and your community response. How are you going to engage? How long will a campaign run? And which sites will you run the marketing on? So I would want you to run your podcast and then put your podcast on social media. And by that way, you don't have to get bogged down in with everybody's Facebook Live because, I don't mind Facebook Live and I do them, but in an era of what we're dealing with, everybody got a Facebook Live. And because they got a Facebook Live, it's inundated in the timeline, and it's not very long that you're going to watch it or listen to it, because I know even with my Facebook Lives, people go in and out. That's what they do, and so it's okay with that. I'm not too whatever with that. So it's what we do. Now here's a part of your podcast. Your podcast has a product, whether it's a service or a physical product. Now, you can use information from your book or your course that you're interested in offering. Like one of the things that I gave was I made up a 7 days to right thinking is what I did. I gave up 7 days to right thinking. Now, here's what I did. When people registered for a product before, or they just registered to give me their name, they got the ebook. Now, here's what happens. You're just using that to be a hook. You're using your podcast, your video blog as a hook to a product that you would like to offer. What's the product? What you're the expert at. And all you're doing is you're sharing the information and you're saying, hey, I'm using the information from this book. You're not even telling them you're selling the book. I'm just using the information from this book I published. So does that sound interesting to you? If it sounds interesting, say it, type it sounds interesting. Now, here's one of the things that this particular podcast came from. This particular podcast came out of this book that I did, Get Paid for What You Know. And podcasting was just one variation of of how you make money on what you know. Why? You can monetize your podcast. You can make a subscription available to your podcast for some. It'll help you sell products. It'll help you make services available, is what it'll do. It's the knowledge, because here's what you're doing. You're offering your knowledge, and that's how you get paid for what you know. You're offering your knowledge. You know a lot. And how many times we know, and I'm only saying this and not as a clowning, but as a guy, I've run into people in the barbershop that act like they know everything. They are jack of all trades and masters of none. But here's a part I shared with a cat one day when he was talking to me. I said, man, if you ain't getting compensated on what you know don't really mean anything. And I wasn't saying it as a negative. I wanted to say it to say, this is what you can get out of this, but you got to have apparatuses. What's your apparatus to begin to develop a crowd? What's your apparatus to develop getting know-how, knowledge? Because a lot of us have obtained knowledge, whether it's been through work, whether it's been through dealing with family, whether it's been, because some people can do a podcast on grieving and do an excellent podcast and don't realize the audience is out there for people to do that podcast with. And here's the beauty of doing that podcast. They don't have to put their face out there. They can just do the audio podcast, because even I use Zoom as one of my webinar choices. Now, the reason is Zoom is just not on video, it's on audio. So I don't even have to strip the audio and use it. I can take the audio file that they save it in. And when I take the audio file, I can upload it to the audio podcast, and I can make that available to others that as they see fit. And so with podcasting, it's about getting in now, because like I said, there's about 700,000 podcasts, and based upon the market, that is absolutely nothing when it comes to podcasting. And what happens is most people are more certain to listen to it, because if you're in the gym and you're on the treadmill and you listen to a podcast, like I'll listen to podcasts on like Dave Ramsey, or the African American gentleman that works with him on finances. I will listen to something like that because it's not long, but it's designed to give me knowledge on finances. Now, here's the beauty of that. I can take that information, I can use that information, and when I take that information and use that information, you know what can happen? I can become the expert. I've heard what someone else say, but I've used what they said for my benefit and for my advantage. And now I can become the expert based upon something that I heard, that I began to practice and use, that I can come back and do a podcast on. One lady did an excellent podcast, and I checked it out about 4 years ago. She said, how to feed your family on less than $100 a week. Okay, how many of y'all know that that's intriguing, to try to feed your family? And I'm talking about, she had a family of 8. So I'm really interested, because I'm like, I got a family of 3. If she feeding a family of 8 for less than 100, I should be using $40 is what I was thinking. But what happened? I listened to it because I was intrigued into what she know. And here's what I did. I paid for it, because some of you're going to become the expert at it, that you'll get an audio file downloaded, and there'll be people that will look and say, oh, I'm going to pay for that. Or how to become an effective leader. Oh, I'll pay for that. How to become a 5-star leader. Oh, I'll pay for that. And that's what people will end up doing when it comes to what you know. Your knowledge is how you make money. The Bible says your gift will make room for you and bring you before great men. Do you see people calling for you based on your knowledge, and people asking you to do conferences based on your knowledge? And every conference these days won't be the ones you show up in on the stage, but the stage will be how you are looking tonight in front of your computer screen with a microphone and sharing information. I've shared on 2 different conferences just like this is what I've done. And it has been a blessing, because it helped me move some of my products because of the information that I share. So here's the thing, and I'll shut this part down because I want to do some Q&A, but I'll just stop the recording part of it, the audio, because I wanted to have it. I didn't want to give you so much information that you didn't have an opportunity to ask questions. Um, uh, Ask questions or be able to share some things. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stop the recording, and then we'll get into some Q&A.